Again, I think a very interesting speaker, and a tonic I think we could do with more of that after many years of hanging around with RHI. That enthusiasm is good. We'll take some questions from the floor now, if there's anybody there that has particular questions. No? Sorry, it's one. One second. While we're waiting on mics and sound to catch up there, I just have a question there for Fergal. In relation to the supply chain, you made some comments there about the RHI and where it's put in layman's terms, where its price point is going to be in relation to supply and what impact that will have on the fibre market in relation to your Quilch's board mills. Do you see a major conflict of interest there within Quilch to manage both sides of that, because they are kind of two competing interests? Sorry, one moment. Yeah. Maybe come over here for a minute. We'll box it out here on stage. Sure. Just going to go right, Rob? Everything's on go, I think. Everything's going to go, is it? Sorry. No, very good. Yeah, that's all right. Okay. Is this still working now? Yeah, there you go.
Yes, I mean the simple answer is that there is potential for competing interests here within Quilcha. I think, though, my point about the supply chain is that I think it needs to be a portfolio approach taken to it, because overemphasising fibre for bioenergy does place pressures on our timber customers on our panel side. And my key point is that I think there will be supply that comes onto the market, and there will be room for both. But we do have a concern that if the RHI is not thought about in a very measured way and is too generous, then it will push up prices for timber products in other sectors. So people in this room who might be processing timber, ourselves processing panels, we need to make sure that whatever RHI is put in place is enough to stimulate and capture that excess demand, but is not so much that it drives a price bidding war for fibre in the market. So that's what I meant by it. I think from what I'm hearing happening in the discussions around it, it does seem to be a sensible approach being taken, so that's why we welcome the RHI initiative, but we're still guiding and guarding against it being too generous.
Okay.
So if that answers your question.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Are we active?
No, sorry, we're ready for 10 minutes.
All right. Well, look, we'll take questions. You just have to shout. Man down there. Sorry, can you just introduce yourself, please? And
Team Maps, we're probably the biggest publisher of renewable energy maps in Europe. The question more addressed to Matthew more than anything else. 2020 targets aside, we talk about Ireland, talks about 80% of its energy needs being imported, and the bulk of that would be transport fuels. And I notice in Ireland there is very little work, very little liquid biofuel production in Ireland. Whereas the potential here, like we're an agricultural country, we have the potential to be producing this, and this would address one of the issues. And it's a bit, it has hardly been mentioned today.
Do you want to answer from here, or yeah?
Yeah, thanks for your question, John. I just mentioned it briefly in passing on what the potential resource is. I disagree with you on us having a large potential for liquid biofuels. It's what we have is very expensive. It's on our arable land, and the sustainability of those as well is also in question. Now, there's a different argument to be made there on the biogas side, where we have large amounts of resource, comparatively speaking. It's predominantly from grass which it's not for free, but it's widely available, and we're well set up to do it. But it takes a big infrastructural change across the board, obviously to get the vehicle stock changed to CNG, and also to get the biomethane injection into the grid. So in terms of where bioenergy can fit into the transport sector in Ireland, that's really where we see the focus needs to be, and it's probably even less the transport sector in general and more the haulage and public sector transport port fleets. I guess electric vehicles probably are a strong option there for private car transport as well. That's the other point I'd make there. So I hope that answers your question. We have looked at the potential. I wouldn't be as bullish as you are on it, but there is definitely some potential there on the gas side.
What you're saying basically then at the moment that it is cheaper to just import biofuels.
Well, it's unquestionably cheaper to import the biofuels, but again the sustainability is one key question here around the cost as well, and what that might do in the future. The winter package is pushing the boundary there a little bit more, and David has shown that if everybody's trying to import, there is these costs might escalate in the future. And you're right to pinpoint transport as a critical sector for Ireland. It's the one where energy efficiency isn't really having a huge impact. It's very sensitive to economic growth. It's grown really rapidly in the last couple of years, even since we've had this slight uptick in the domestic economy. So it is very important, and actually there's an event parallel to this today on sustainable energy and transport, and I completely agree with you there. It's a sector that needs a focus, and we need to focus on to meet the 80% reduction.
Any other questions there for, yeah?
So I'd like to address a question I'm Dara Connolly from ESB, and I'd like to address a question to Dr. David Connolly on the role of renewable electricity in decarbonising the heat sector. So you've spoken about the importance of district heating and its applicability in areas of density of population that can support that particular vector to supplying heat. And outside of those areas, we in ESB would see an important role in renewable electricity combined with deep retrofit in decarbonising the heating sector. And what that means is the use of heat pumps. So I just note that, and I'm glad you made this point, that it's misleading to talk about boilers being 80 or 90% efficient and the production of electricity being 40% efficient, when that electricity can go and be multiplied up with a COP of 3 or more, so that the system efficiency of using biomass in electricity generation and using that to generate heat in homes can actually exceed the efficiency of using the biomass directly for heating in the homes.
Oh, I could be here all night. We in Heat Roadmap Europe, we actually had to create a framework for our recommendations for the heat sector, because the heat sector is a bit of a dynamic beast, because it's not just about energy experts, it's about building experts, insulation experts, all kind of, could say expertise come together. And the framework we ended up making to communicate our message as clearly as we could is that we recommend there's 3 key decisions for the heat sector. How much you reduce the heat demand in your buildings, how you heat your cities, and how you heat your countryside. For us, they're the 3 really, really important questions to answer. And there's a lot of, let's say, nuances, but they're the 3 big ones. In terms of reducing the heat demand in your buildings, for sure there's a lot of opportunities. But there isn't a chance in hell that we will insulate our way to a zero carbon heating sector, unless some very generous billionaire feels like giving away lots of money. The cost just becomes so enormous. And after, the best case scenario we can imagine is that in a best case scenario, you may reduce the heat demand across the building stock by up to 50%. That would be like a huge achievement. And nobody has achieved anything of that scale in 40 years in the past. So if we look 40 years into the future, it would be a huge achievement. Then the other 2 questions, cities and countryside. In the countryside, of course, networks are not an option. And our most highly recommended solution there is the electric heat pump. That is where you get the electricity, especially the low carbon electricity from wind and solar, into your heating sector. And then when it comes to the cities, what we find is that a district heating network with a large scale heat pump is a cheaper alternative than an individual heat pump put into every single building. So even if we do go down the electrification route in our cities, building one big heat pump, of course it won't be one, but let's say lots of big heat pumps that are well maintained with really good COPs will outperform and come at a lower cost than trying to go into every single household and put a heat pump in there and convince everyone to upfront 5,000–6,000 euro for that heat pump as a cost. So definitely electrification is a big part of the plan, but when we talk about cities, our idea of electrification is a large-scale heat pump delivering heat onto a heat network.
Thanks very much.
Any more questions there? I have another question there. Actually, David, while you're up here, might as well. You mentioned district heating there again. Is that an option for Ireland, given our mild climate? From a commercial perspective, we have a very short heating season compared to Scandinavia, and we all look there.
Yeah, but we have very bad buildings. When I bring the Danes here on holidays, they're freezing inside, and they're always like, "Why is it so cold in the buildings?" Even though the weather outside is maybe on average colder, the building standards here are less typically, and they somehow balance each other out, you could say. So when we look at the heat densities, let's say the most important thing for a network is not how cold it is outside, it's how many buildings you have located in a small area close together. So it justifies building a pipe between them. And when we look at Dublin, let's say, there's very similar levels. There's heat densities in Dublin that far exceed heat densities in Copenhagen where district heating is built. I suppose that's the easy summary on that. So there is definitely, from a technical point of view, sufficient heat densities in large parts of Dublin, Cork, and
when you say heat densities, you're meaning that that's the total heat usage for on an annual basis?
Yeah, on a certain area of land.
Consumers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any more questions?
I can just let you know as well, the Heat Roadmap Europe study has a heat atlas for all of Europe. So if you go onto the Heat Roadmap Europe website, you can look at Ireland and see how does it compare to other parts of Europe. So take, for example, the Denmarks and the Austrias and have a look at Vienna and Copenhagen and see how it compares to Dublin on the heat atlas.
Yeah, one final question I have there. Thanks David. Thanks. If there's nobody, there is a question down near the back there. Yeah, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Just following up what you're saying about bioenergy and district heating and combining power as a no regrets policy. Forecasted houses per annum, even now in this difficult housing situation, are being built one-off in the countryside. And indeed, much of our money for upgrading is still going into non-functional housing in the countryside. I want to know, is SEAI and Quilta and others, are they going to make strong submissions to the new framework of planning, which is going to revisit spatial patterns in this country? Because not only can we not afford to heat our buildings in the countryside because we have so many with electricity, but we can't afford for our cars to travel to and from those non-functional. Our electricity resources can't meet it, particularly if we heat a cold winter. Simply that. So it's not just an energy problem, it's also a spatial
Is it really what you're getting to the point that we shouldn't be building one off?
SEAI and others like Quilta, bearing in mind our targets on energy and particularly greenhouse gas issues, are they making strong representation into the Department of the Environment that we have to look at our planning policies in this country support settlements in rural areas that can take bioenergy, because they're absolutely the easiest to do, right beside the resources, starting small, distributed energy systems with
Yeah.
anaerobic digestion? Or is that, you know the solution. But
maybe,
are those bodies making those connections?
Matthew, I'll pass that question over to you. I think it's about housing density.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nick. Yeah, that's a point well made. The Department of Environment is obviously our parent department now, and all the energy models we run and all the statistics we collect echo what you've just said there. You know, we have higher transport miles per person than other European countries. A key one for the cost of energy here is we've longer distances of electricity and gas networks as well because of that development, and it does make the solutions more difficult. And there is a public acceptance aspect to this as well. That a dispersed population, when you're trying to put out renewable energy collectors all across the countryside, there's much more potential for conflict that other countries don't face. So. Yes, the short answer, we do articulate those points where we have expertise to do that, and but again, it's not something that will be solved overnight. And I go back to that chart about the 80% reduction. It's one of the things we need to continue to do, along with many other things. So just to make that point again.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. I'd like to thank all the speakers for their contributions. I think they were informative. So if we give them a round of applause, please. Thank you.